Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Erik Seversen, where he tells us why you should hire a personal coach, in addition to 2 changes to drastically improve your work-life balance. Don't go anywhere. Part 2 is coming up.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. You know, what's some of the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, interesting. The first thing that pops into my head was actually what I consider one of the biggest compliments I've ever been given. So this is after I've been to Africa, after I've been to Japan. I worked there for a little bit, and I'm still in my early 20s. And I was at a philosophy conference, and afterwards there was a kind of like a little bit of an after get together with about probably 20 people. And there was some wine, there was some hors d'oeuvres, and we were sitting around, and one individual particularly had a long gray beard. He was a doctor of religious studies. He was a Muslim. And we were just talking in this group of about 6 or 8 people for maybe an hour and a half. And then as a few people kind of walked away, he just looked at me, paused, and he said, "Erik, you've had time to think." And that was it. When he said that to me, "You've had time to think," I didn't know exactly what he meant right away. And as I processed it, I realized when I was in Africa, I was alone. When I was in Japan, I was working at a school, but I lived alone for a lot of the time. Other travels I've had, I traveled alone. And I realized that a lot of that time of me being alone really allowed me to think through what's absolutely important in my life. And so his advice from that was, I always try and make sure I take time to get out and think. And this kind of circles back to what you said about your exercise. As you're exercising, the thoughts flow freely. And often when we're exercising, we're alone with our own heads. You know, sometimes you're jogging and having a conversation, other times you're not. But that time alone, so I take my time alone every morning. I try and have some quiet time alone. I go into the mountains as often as I can. And even if I'm roped to 3 other people who are, 30 feet away each, I'm alone in my thoughts. And so that's probably it. And go from knowledge to action, just going for it comes to mind as well. The worst advice I've ever gotten happened multiple times, and that was, you can't do it. I wanted to play ice hockey, and most of the people who played ice hockey when I grew up in Washington State, they started when they were young, 6, 8 years old. So I'm 13 or 14 and decide, hey, I want to play ice hockey. So everybody's like, hey, you can't do it. So I taught myself how to skate over a year and a half, and I, got the ice hockey team. Then UCLA, I was a poor student growing up, and I didn't have a lot of support, but didn't try really hard either. In my junior year of high school, something clicked, and I decided, wow, I want to be engaged. Everything clicked. And I went from a C- to an A average. And so then everybody had to have this high school counselor meeting. So I met with this counselor, and I can picture her in my head now, and told her I wanted to go to UCLA. She literally leaned forward, pushed herself back, and said, "You'll never get into a school like that." And essentially closed her notebook, and the meeting was over in 3 minutes. And so I got into UCLA 2 years later after they rejected me. I applied and they rejected me. So I went to community college and made it in 2 years later. So multiple times people said I can't do it. And in the end, I achieved pretty much everything I really set my mind to.
I love that story. I have a very similar story. I decided that I was going to go to school for insurance and risk management. And went to apply, and they said, "Oh, you didn't do so well in high school." I said, "What do you mean? I graduated 24th in my class." They're like, "Yes, but there was only 25 people." True story. So I was not a model student. They said the same thing. They said, you got to go take some courses at a community college, and if you want to get in, send us the transcripts, and we'll go from there. So 6 months later, I show back up on their door, and they're like, "Wow, you're back." I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I'm doing. You told me what I needed to do. I did it. Now I'm back." They were shocked. No one had ever come back.
That's awesome. And that's again going from taking action. It would have been so easy to be discouraged and walk away.
Yeah. It's all about the action. Even if it's not perfect action, you're making progress.
I agree. One of my kind of mottos is I don't really care what direction I'm moving as long as I'm moving.
Yeah. And maybe there's a better direction than what you think is the direction that you should be moving.
Absolutely. Multiple times something horrible has happened, and I've always found a positive result in the end.
So this is a great time for a question. I love throwing questions right in the middle to the audience. So where in your life, where in your business are you stuck? You don't have clarity. You don't know which way to go, but there's multiple ways to go. You just haven't chosen one. Pick one. Doesn't have to be the right one. Pick one and start moving.
All right. So that's a great question. And right now I have got a great full-time job that I love. And so I'm still doing international development.
And I love this. I was asking the audience, and now you're going to answer the question. Go for it.
Oh no! I want to hear the audience's question. Then I also have I've got my own company that I've started, and there is a balancing act of how much energy do I spend on developing the company I own versus the company that I'm an employee of, and they treat me really well. But in the end, I know that I can go personally further with my own company, but it's also hard to let go of something that I actually love doing, even if I am working for somebody else.
Well, first of all, hats off to you, because I get this question so often. It's, I've got a career, I'm working, I'm making money. It's not really what I'm passionate about. I want to get into X, Y, and Z. When should I quit my job and, go for my new adventure? And I'm always saying, be very careful, right? We still have to pay our rent. We still have to pay our mortgage. We still have to pay the car bills. We still have to make sure that kids have food on the table. So a lot of people are doing this now. It's funny, when I became an entrepreneur almost 19 years ago now, it wasn't kind of the in thing to do. Now it's so popular. It seems like everybody wants to become an entrepreneur. How are you balancing that? You've obviously working, a very important job during the day. How do you have the energy? How do you have the time to get the other business going?
Yeah, that's also that's the $1 million question, and there was a period when I didn't do very well with it. There was a period where I found that if you can look at my personal needs, which are I need to get out alone and do things. I told you about how much I value alone thinking time, and for me that's usually in the mountains. Then I've got a wife and 2 kids, and then I've got my work, and so balancing that triangle, and the work can be bifurcated into my own thing going on and then the company I work for. And so I went through about a 3-year period when I was having a really hard time, where I felt like, okay, the more successful I am in my entrepreneurial project, the less time I have for my wife and kids. The more time I spend with my wife and kids, the less time. So I found myself being lacking in one of the 3 spaces at any given time. And then I made some changes. And one of them, for example, is I don't listen to music in the car. I listen to either nothing, so I could be thinking about my business, or I listen to a motivational or entrepreneurial type, whether it's a Tony Robbins, thing, or an iPod or a podcast, So I'm either self-developing or thinking about my business. That's one example. Second is I decided, you know what, I'm really going to actually write down my focus times a little bit. So when I'm with my kids or my wife, I'm 100% focused on them, and I'm not even thinking at all about that. I'm not going to step out and make my 5-minute phone call that I used to do. And when I'm at work, I'm not thinking about missing where my kids are, because I've allotted this space for work. So I don't have to think, hey, I'm going to be late for this soccer game. What should I do? So I decide, okay, I'm going to do this and do that, but not worry about what's happening on the other side.
That is great. You know, I talk about this all the time. If you want to fit everything in, start cutting things out. No matter where you are, whatever you're doing, don't be anywhere else except there. And if you try to multitask, it is a disaster. Nobody gets your attention. Nobody gets your presence. And you're lousy at everything. So stop it.
I agree. And Thor, you're one of the guys who's really helping in this arena, I think, because you do entrepreneurial coaching. I know you've got your training things going on. I think absolutely every single person should have a coach and should even maybe be a coach, kind of like almost a pyramid. You've got, the high level stadium fillers, Tony Robbins, Brendan. And then you've got, somebody, David Brownlee is a guy I know in San Diego. He's a friend of mine who's also a coach and a public speaker. You've got, Adam Flores, who's, a rising star in the social media world. These people are both coachees. They have coaches themselves and they coach other people. And I think that pyramid is really, really helpful to help people at all levels. So I personally spend quite a bit of money in self-development. I don't know exactly what percent of my income it is, but it's a lot. It's in the multiple thousands per year. And every single time I look back and see where I've spent money to better myself, I see where it's paid dividends. And so I really think that surrounding yourself by friends who are like who you want to be, and maybe hiring coaches, and it doesn't have to be every week, every day, even if it's doing a seminar, even if it's doing an online, 1 week challenge from somebody that you respect. I love those things. And they've helped me, and I've seen other people gain a lot from them as well.
Yeah, get around great people. One of the things of the experience at Stratton is there are 174 amazing people. Each one of them at minimum spent $3,500 to just get to the event, upwards of $12,000, depending on what you wanted from the event. Now, do you think the people that actually took the time to train to do this, spent the money to do it? I mean, we had incredible, obviously, athletes, CEOs that you would not believe, TV personalities. I mean, there were some just amazing, amazing people to get around. And find something in your community, find something that you can start to get around people that are playing at a level that is much higher than yours. One of the guys at the event was the world record holder for the 7 summits and the North Pole and the South Pole. It was like I hiked the mountain with this guy. I mean, this is the Grady O'Brien. Grady O'Brien is his name. Incredible. I mean, I couldn't keep up with him, of course, but
but you're there. Yeah,
I was there. We both got to the top of the mountain the same time in one of the evenings. Now, of course, he was probably on the 13th, and I was probably on my 3rd summit. But get around people like that. Find out how they think. And it doesn't always have to be business. It can be anybody that's getting extraordinary results. I mean, he's got a mindset that enables him to push past things that are not comfortable. And that's what expands you.
Yeah, and that goes back to your caddy story of you're a caddy. That's awesome. Yeah. But you decided, hey, I'm not going to be the guy who's just carrying a bag and going and, throwing darts between golfers. You took that to learn because you got to be around a certain type of person who thinks a certain type of way, which is a successful business person, and you seized that opportunity to learn from it, where I think it'd be really easy as a teenager to just let that all fly by without even seeing the opportunity.
Yeah, there's opportunities everywhere to learn. Everywhere. And I love the fact that in your car, no music. Spending time just with yourself or podcast. There's so many. You turn it into a mobile university. I call it time.
Really?
Doing other things.
Yep.
Put 2 things: drive and learn. That should be the new university. The mobile university.
I like it.
I like that too. That's somebody who would end up probably taking a test while they're driving and end up cracking their car.
Let's hope not.
Exactly. Don't do that. No texting and driving, folks. You heard it here first or second. Everybody's interested in success. However, only a few are really committed to it. What's the difference? Those that are committed are willing to do whatever it takes in order to get their outcome, in order to get their goals. If you're not getting the results you need and want, chances are it's accountability. Who's holding you accountable? I've got a challenge for you. For 1 month, 30 days, and $95, our team will hold you accountable for what you said you were going to get done in that month to get your goals, get your outcomes done. If at the end of 30 days you don't like the results or you just didn't like the system, we'll give you your money back. The question is, are you interested or are you committed?
Keep an eye out for part 3 of our conversation with Erik, where he tells us the 7 lessons he learned while traveling in Africa and why you need to ask for help. See you next time on Peak Performers Podcast.